Howdy, YouTube motorcycle enthusiasts. Today I'd like to present to you my review of the Kawasaki Z900RS. My particular example is a 2022 model in the really beautiful blue and gold colorway. So let's get into it. The first thing that really draws anybody into a motorcycle is usually the way that it looks. If looks aren't the first thing that generates interest about a motorcycle, they are often the thing that is a deciding factor. If you're a fan of retro motorcycle design, there's no denying that the Kawasaki Z900RS looks beautiful. And yet, I don't regularly hear about this bike when people discuss modern retro-style motorcycles. Lovers of retro bikes often gush about the BMW R9T, the Ducati Scramblers, the Yamaha XSR series, Triumph's Modern Classics, etc. Why doesn't a bike like the Z900RS get the same amount of love? When you walk up to the Z900RS, the motorcycle looks legitimately classic. Hardly anything looks out of place. Long retro seat? Check. Beautiful jelly bean shaped tank? Check. Analog gauges? Check. Round headlight with chrome bezel? Check. You get the idea. The design is executed well, with excellent fit and finish. It's executed so well that barely anything sticks out. And there lies the rub. This retro gem doesn't have a gimmick. The R9T, for example, has that heavily sculpted tank and heavenly boxer engine that demand your attention, while Triumph has fake carbs and product placement in movies. Ducati Scrambler has a legendary L-twin air-cooled 2-valve lump hanging in the trellis frame. The Z900, well, it's just really clean. The Cowie's like that gal that looks gorgeous, but nothing about her stands out. The bike needs a beauty mark. It needs a little spice to go with all that retro sugar. So let's talk about airflow management, a hugely debated topic among my riding buddies. This bike has no dedicated bodywork to assist with airflow management. However, I suspect the tank shape, the shape of the gauge enclosure, and the headlamp design all assist with presenting the rider with clean, turbulent-free airflow. So what do I think of the riding environment of the Z900RS? First, let's talk about the gauges. The Z900RS has a small digital LCD flanked by two beautiful analog gauges on either side. This is a nice compromise between analog tradition and modern convenience. However, the LCD is hard to see in the daylight. The low visibility of the LCD isn't a huge problem for me, as I typically only reference it to check fuel levels or engine temp. The pegs are nicely spaced from the 32-inch high seat. My knees and hips never get fatigued while riding this motorcycle. My backside is ever thankful for the comfortable seat. The handlebars and grips feel very natural and allow for easy leverage of the fork. I have zero complaints about the riding posture, and I feel like most folks are going to dig it. The transmission on the Z900RS is pretty dang good. The clutch throw isn't very long and the bite point is very immediate. Shifting is very tactile. Only smaller bikes that I've ridden with watch-like precision have slicker, crisper shifting. And neutral is easy to find. Thank you, Kawasaki. All in all, the transmission doesn't get in the way of the beautiful engine, and what more could you really ask for? Let's talk about the tires and chassis. The Z900 rolls on 17-inch wheels front and back and Dunlop Sport Max tires. I've heard a lot of grief online about these tires, but I haven't noticed much of an issue. That said, my tires still have some chicken strips. There isn't any crash protection for the tank and the radiator, so I'm probably not as uninhibited in the corners as I'd prefer to be. I did notice that SW Motec makes a nice looking set of crash bars for the motorcycle, and I'd recommend those if you really wanted to explore the limits of the Z900RS. I found the chassis on the Z900RS to be excellent. The motorcycle has great straight line stability and balances that with good turning characteristics. The flickability isn't as good as, say, a Ducati Monster, but the chassis feels more refined than the Monster. In addition, the Z900RS's shock and forks do a great job of ironing out road imperfections as well. Okay, so here's the fun stuff, y'all. The Z900 isn't made to be the fastest bike for the price. It is a styling exercise combined with a nicely tuned engine, with a broad power band, a highly usable powertrain, and a competent chassis. The specs of the bike indicate 111 horsepower. Now keep in mind, this is probably the second 4-pot motorcycle I've ever ridden. I'm more of a twin-cylinder guy at heart, if that helps you guys understand where I'm coming from. So when I bought this bike, I had no idea what a 4-cylinder engine would be like. I assumed the engine would be gutless down low and peaky up top, sort of like a old Honda VTEC, but I was really wrong. It was shocking how broad the power band on this motorcycle was, coming from years and years of twin-engine motorcycles. The engine pulls smoothly from just below 3,000 RPM all the way up to the 11,000 RPM-ish redline. It's very, very smooth, almost electric-like, with very few vibes through the handlebars. Contrasting this with, say, a Ducati L-Twin, where the engine tends to stutter down low and gives you a big mid-range kick in the pants, the Z900's engine is almost like a big rheostat of power. Wherever you want it, the Z900's got it. I do need to take a minute and talk about the Z900RS's throttle response. It is immediate, and some would even call it abrupt, and yet others would call it jerky or snatchy. But all of those adjectives are, let's say, two-dimensional. And what us riders are experiencing with the Z900RS's throttle and other modern motorcycles that are Euro 5 compliant is more three-dimensional in nature. As soon as you open the throttle, the Z900 will respond. And because it responds from almost any usable RPM, there's no escaping that immediacy. And the same can be said when you close the throttle. So the challenge is when you need to ride this bike smooth down a technical road, it's hard to do. You have to pay attention all the time to your right hand. Some of you guys are never going to notice this, and I didn't notice it until I actually bought another motorcycle and had it in the garage at the same time, and that bike has a very, very smooth throttle. And I realized that I was able to corner much more confidently and become a better rider because the throttle was more gentle, if you will, both on and off. The Z900RS's engine and throttle characteristics could be more of an asset than liability in a more urban environment, where positioning the motorcycle in traffic is far more important than clipping an apex on a back road. So closing thoughts. Upright riding position, immediate throttle, broad shoulder power band, and a capable chassis make this an excellent city riding bike, getting you out of trouble when you need and into trouble when you want. Back roads, however, this is not my favorite bike for the task. The Z900 has too much engine if you really want to thrash it. The chassis is great, but I'm always worried about dropping the bike on its beautiful tank. Perhaps an ECU flash could smooth out the on-off throttle characteristic, and some crash bars, like I mentioned before, could alleviate my concerns about damaging the tank. Both of those options are worth looking into if you share my concerns. So that's my review, y'all. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your feedback about your Z900RS or your rides on that motorcycle. Or if you have any questions, please leave those in the comments below. Until next time, y'all, keep it shiny side up and ride safe.